Hello, I'm Brett Thorson, and you're listening to a Compute Cycle Deep Dive brought to you by Activity Incorporated. Have you ever wondered what those trusted root certificate authority updates you get from Microsoft are? Have you found yourself inside Firefox looking at a list of companies you never knew were in there? Chances are you found yourself looking at companies on the web you implicitly trust. On this deep dive, we'll show you how SSL certificates work, what happened when a Comodo reseller had a breach in security, and how OCSP can help you if done correctly. The first thing that happens in the life of an SSL certificate is the establishment of a new certificate authority. These are similar to popular companies like VeriSign, GoDaddy, GeoTrust, and Comodo. Less well-known certificate authorities exist, such as DigiNotar, the government of Taiwan and Japan, and Swisscom, all trusted by your browser. How they got there requires another video, but the fact is, they exist and your browser trusts them. In our example, we made a company called CertCo, and we created a key pair. In this case, we created a signing key on top that stays ultra-protected in our company CertCo. The other part of this key pair is a public key that gets implanted into the key store of everyone's web browsers. This public part of our key is put into the Trusted Root Certificate Authority database in our web browsers. Next, we'll look at the process of what a company has to do to get an SSL certificate for their website. We'll create a fictitious company called the Bank of Trust. Their IT administrator, Bob, has been told to get an SSL certificate for their website. Bob uses software on his computer to create a certificate request. This is the blue piece. Bob creates the certificate request, but it doesn't do him any good as it isn't signed or verified by anybody. Bob looks either on the web for an SSL provider, or he looks at the certificate authorities listed in his web browser and chooses one. Today, Bob chose CertCo. Bob sends his certificate request listing all of his company's information along with the name of the server. CertCo will sign the certificate with their super-sensitive signing key. At this point, the difference between a cheap SSL certificate and an expensive EV SSL certificate is how much verification CertCo does on the Bank of Trust to ensure the certificate they are requesting really is for a server they own. For the cheap certificates, CertCo may just verify the domain name of the email address requesting the certificate is the same as the server in the request form. For an EV SSL certificate, it may involve a signature from a public member of the company or financial statements. In this case, CertCo signs the request and issues the Bank of Trust a certificate for their website. This certificate is placed on the website of the Bank of Trust. Now, when a web browser goes to that page, they will request the public SSL certificate. Once this certificate has been downloaded by the browser from the website, it will look into its list of trusted certificate authorities to see if it was signed by someone it trusts. In this case, it has the public part of CertCo certificate, the bottom red block. It matches that with the top part from the Bank of Trust's certificate, along with the Bank of Trust's individual information, and confirms a good certificate, and then creates an encrypted session. Now let's take a look at what happened with a breach in security that occurred around the time of March of 2011. We'll make another fictitious company called Dragonfire CertCo. For this example, this is another legitimate certificate provider. As you can see, both CertCo and Dragonfire have their trusted CA certificate in our browser. Now enter the Bank of Trickery. Somehow, someone at the Bank of Trickery broke into Dragonfire's computer systems and made a copy of their signing key. That's the green piece that is supposed to be kept very secure. They brought it back to the Bank of Trickery and made a certificate request that looked just like the Bank of Trust. However, in this case, since they had the signing key from Dragonfire, they could sign their own key. What is about to happen also depends on the Bank of Trickery having access to our internet connection or otherwise being able to redirect our traffic. This is actually easier than one may think, especially depending upon where you live in the world. In this case, our browser wanted to go to the Bank of Trust, but instead was redirected to the Bank of Trickery. The Bank of Trickery presented to our web browser a web page that looked exactly like the Bank of Trust, so our browser requested the SSL certificate. The Bank of Trickery sent their illegitimate certificate to our browser. Our browser looked at this illegitimate certificate, verified it was signed by someone it trusted, and accepted the key, and went on to make an encrypted session with the bank of trickery. In this case, anyone with that signing key from Dragonfire could make legitimate keys for any site they wanted to, and our browser would never complain. Now, you must be asking, isn't there a way to detect this? Sure, it's called OCSP, Online Certificate Status Protocol. When the browser receives a key from anyone, it will then communicate back with an OCSP responder. This could be a central place, the issuer of the certificate, or some other server. The OCSP responder can reply back with a good, a revoked, or an unknown. In our case, our browser went back to a trusted authority and asked if this was a valid certificate. The OCSP responder sent back an unknown. In our perfect world, this would have terminated the connection with the bank of trickery and thrown the certificate in the trash. However, browsers implement the results in different ways. Also, if the browser received a malformed response or none at all, some are programmed to accept the certificate and continue, meaning that if a bad person on the internet can redirect you to the bank of trickery and block an OCSP request, they could succeed in getting you to their website. We hope this brief explanation helped you understand SSL certificates, the Comodo SSL issue of March 2011, and how OCSP is currently implemented in some browsers if available. If you have any comments or feedback on this podcast, please send them to feedback@computecycle.com. I'm Brett Thorson. Thank you for listening to this Compute Cycle Deep Dive brought to you by Activity Incorporated.